So we continue over here on the same subject of Al Rebbe, taking into consideration all issues and problems that a person could have in the duration of his lifetime, which would perhaps disturb, interfere with his ability to stand on a constant basis with simcha v'tuv levov, joy, and literally meaning gladness of heart. Again, as Al Rebbe pointed out, how important it is that we really can't do without it. On the battlefield, in our service to God, we can't do without the elation and positive, upbeat spirit. It's impossible to win the war with the Yetzer Hara when a person doesn't stand with this joy, with this genuine joy and genuine tev lev. In other words, secure and certain, secure with security and certainty, which would cause him to be besimcha. So there are different issues which can interfere. So Al Rebbe dealt with the one classes before this one, dealing with physical problems that a person could have, which perhaps could bring down his spirit. The last time we learned, it was Al Rebbe speaks about spiritual issues, which will bring down a person thinking about his past, and that could bring him down. And again, we dealt with this articulately in the last class, and this Perek with Al Rebbe begins the 27th chapter, which this is the beginning of today's class. Again, the 27th chapter in Tanya, and again, you could follow the previous classes on koshertube.com, as well as tanyaonline.com, with the advantage of the text. I will just note we try to catch up as much as quick as we can with the to put it on to the latter website in order that we should be up to date. Sometimes we're backed up a little bit, a week or two, but everything ultimately comes on with Hashem's help. So we begin today the 27th chapter. Now, what is Al Rebbe dealing with in the 27th chapter? Other issues. Again, it's in the context of spiritual problems, but not spiritual problems of a person lamenting his past or reflecting on his past, which could bring his spirit down, but rather on the present battle. A person could be down because of the present battle he has with his Yetzer Hara. Meaning that the struggle, the challenge, the struggle with the Yetzer Hara, the challenges the Yetzer Hara presents us with, could be, and not only could be, are many times kind of even tormenting, which means he doesn't only tell us to do things which are outright bad action, for example, which I can stay away. I don't have any particular temptation to eat not kosher, especially in a day like the world like today. A person could have he could eat everything. Everything comes in kosher as well. I don't have, the Jew knows that Hashem says you're not allowed to eat non-kosher. Okay, so go to a kosher restaurant. That's not where the challenge necessarily is. Obviously, everyone has their own challenges, but someone who's usually on the derech hamelech, he's on the way of, he's on the right path. That is not his most important challenge, which you can say a challenge, just brings the spirit down. You're talking about things which are much more subtle, but yet because they are subtle, and because they're more detailed or more type of soul challenges, they reach very deep and can be. In other words, if we don't look at them or understand how Torah wants us to deal with it with the right perspective, they can be very tormenting. And if they're tormenting, they bring our spirit down. And if I bring our spirit down, how do you expect us? How do you expect the Yid to go ahead in with this march, as we use that term, go ahead with joy and elation and upbeat spirit when he's confronted on a constant basis, not only something which comes periodically, infrequently, on a constant basis he's confronted with his challenges. Where the Yetzer Hara again tries to persuade, as we said, it's not something which is extreme or something which is a clear-cut negative action, which not necessarily is my challenge. You're dealing with things which I say subtle means, for example, they're not. When I say subtle, I don't mean to say things which are less important But I mean to say they're dealing with deeper chords of my soul. It's 100% a person chas v'shalom as he's driving down the road to look at things which Torah says is prohibited to look at. As an example, how many times that we're on the road? We're always on the road. How many times we have these challenges? We always have these challenges. And Torah says that the person has to be careful what he looks at, what he thinks about, what he hears. We are prohibited. One is prohibited to entertain his mind with things which are immodest, as an example, things which are provocative. And we know the eyes are one of the Suri, the Aveda. It says it is one of the entries. It was one of the persuaders for the person to sin. And the Torah says, do not follow your hearts and your eyes, which you're inclined. The Torah uses lashon zaynim achareim, which means it's an expression which your heart has this innate, perhaps innate drive to look at and internalize, entertain your mind with. And that's why the lashon is zaynim achareihem, literally means what you're looking out for. But it's in the context also of the immodest. And it's a clear prosik in Torah. Like someone's not going to eat a sandwich on Yom Kippur because Torah says you got to fast. Torah says there's rules not only of how we our interaction, nor how we relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'maisa in the world of action, but there are rules pertaining our speech. And someone said, "What's it?" I just said it. I just spoke a not nice word, or I spoke in an immodest manner, or I spoke lashon hara again between man and between his fellow friend. I just said it. I didn't do anything. No, there's a whole set of rules when it comes to speech. Speech it carries a lot of weight, and speech is one of the faculties which HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us we have a mandate within Torah how to deal with our speech, how to exercise our speech. Certain things we're simply not allowed, is prohibited to speak. And again, in the positive, we must use our speech in different areas associated with mitzvah, with the positive mitzvahs, daven and learn and so on. So someone's going to say, okay, I'm not allowed speaking, I'll just try to be careful. So what are my thoughts? No one knows what I'm thinking. I'm just thinking. I'm entertaining my mind with certain thoughts. I'm not even speaking about it. Or similar with things which evoke our thoughts to in a specific direction. Our eyes are just looking. But no, the Torah tells us, just like the Torah has a whole set of rules when it comes to our action. Torah has a whole set of rules when it comes to our speech. Torah has a whole set of rules when it comes to our thoughts. Clear Torah prohibition. Same Torah which tells us we have to fast, we're not turning on the light on Shabbos, we have to eat kosher. Torah says you have to make sure your mind stays pure. And it's clearly prohibited to entertain our mind with things which this what Torah says we are prohibited to entertain our mind with. And our eyes we have to be careful again, which is the entry into our mind. Our ears, our mind. And again, in the positive, machshava plays an important role in different dimensions or different areas regarding the positive mitzvahs as well. And for that matter, even there's a whole regarding karbanis, regarding sacrifices. I'm not going to go into all the details. Pigul, which is again, where thought plays a very crucial role and makes the carbon kosher or not. Yeah. And if someone eats from it, I mean, the thought it plays similar to action and speech. Thought plays an important role in our Avodas Hashem. But because it plays an important role in Avodas Hashem, and we want to remain pure, and the Yetzer Hara has a different set of presentations. It's trying to persuade us to do that, speak that, and look there, and think that. All these that's are contrary to what Hashem wants us to do. So it's very tantalizing. It's very challenging, and it could be. It is not a question that if we don't understand how to deal with these realities, how to use the manual. Let's use this term, the types of terms we used in the past. It could be very tormenting. I want to be a Fruma Yid. I want to make sure I'm aligned with what Hashem's Torah. And I try very hard, but there's certain things which are dealing more with the refined chords of my mind or my being or my soul, that it becomes very challenging and very painful in order to overcome this what Yisahara presents, especially when it comes to things which are more refined, more subtle, which is like to keep a pure mind. Okay, I'm not going to eat kosher food, but I'm not going to eat the non-kosher food. I'm going to fast in Kippur, I'm fine. With that I can maintain my simcha v'tuv levav, my joy and elation of heart. But when it comes to, and even speech, I'll hold myself back. I won't talk lashon hara, despite it's a juicy piece and people are talking about it, or I can throw in a good word. Everybody will start laughing. I can gain a certain nefesh baham is the animal soul. The Yitzhahara can derive a lot of pleasure, but I'm going to hold myself back. That doesn't necessarily bring a person's spirit down. But when it comes to things which are more difficult, or even things I won't speak about, things which a Torah tells me I'm prohibited to speak about. Again, not only lashon hara between man and his fellow friend, which is ultimately a mandate, a dictate from God. God tells us we shouldn't speak lashon hara. But I'm going to be careful with my speech. Also, not a reason for me to bring to my spirit should be brought down. And again, should be challenging in this which Alter Rebbe points out so clearly, that we have to stay on a constant basis because we're on the battlefield with joy and elation and gladness of heart. But when it comes to things which are getting more subtle and things are much more challenging, it's a matter of controlling, my mind, my thought, my eyes, my mouth. There's an opening and closing. I shut my mouth, put my mouth closed, and I'm 100% in control, despite my temptation sometimes to speak things which are not aligned with what Hashem wants. But I could still control myself. It takes control. Everything takes control. As long as we have the Yitzhahara telling us to go one direction, it takes effort. Why did Abish to create things like that there should be, it's a tevin, it's a hard, but we're not going there right now. Hashem wanted us to make our choice. He wanted everything to be done with our, again, the freedom of choice, which is the great gift which we have the ability to do things on our own, to demonstrate to God that despite I have this challenge, I'll do the way you want, and I won't obey it. I won't adhere to the call of the Yitzhahara. So that's the whole reason why generally there are the two voices. But there's always two voices, and it's always a challenge. But at least when it comes to speech, I know that I can close my mouth and I have full control. But when it comes to thoughts, it comes to my eyes, there I could try, and I try so hard. But it could be very, very difficult, and that difficulty, that's where the spirit of a person could be brought down. And there's the catch-22. On one hand, it's clear that in order to overcome the Yitzhahara, especially when it comes to these challenges of thought and speech, and even thought and eyes and ears and so on, I need to be samech. I need to be with uplifted spirits, with a certainty, with the security that I'm marching forward and not letting anything stop me. But the fact that it's such a difficult challenge, it's such a difficult war, that itself doesn't allow me to be in the right frame of mind rather, and to be in the right positive spirit in order to even overcome these challenges. So I fall back because I'm so tormented, and my falling back doesn't allow me to triumph and overcome the next presentation of the Yitzhahara. So what am I supposed to do? And these things are questions of Evdei Hashem, true people who serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They really want to stay on the right path. They want to do the right thing. They really want to do the right thing. But this is really challenging. And again, how do we go about this? What do we do about it? It's almost inevitable to bring our spirits down. If our spirits down, again, the problem is not only it brings our spirit down, it doesn't allow us to overcome the next image, the next presentation of Yitzhahara. So this is one of the issues which the Alter Rebbe is going to deal with over here in this chapter, and which again follows the previous chapters, which tell the Yid that in old times we have the ability to stand with an uplifted, secure and with spirit, because that's crucial and essential to our service to God. And so too, and again, dealing with the previous challenges we dealt with in the previous weeks, the Rebbe addresses a challenge, not something. Again, it's part of the spiritual problems or challenges the person has, but it's different than the last portion which we learned, which are dealing with the down spirit of the Yid based on his past. In this case, however, it's dealing with the present. I know that today, or my challenge today, tormenting challenge today with the Yetzer Hara is bringing my spirits down. And it's sometimes a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis, sometimes a minute basis, sometimes a second basis, sometimes on a millisecond basis, because you're dealing with such a fine part of the soul, especially when it comes to vision, thought. It's not like a door I can close, perhaps. Again, on the surface it seems so. And therefore, I really want to make sure my mind is clean. And I'm told that my mind must be clean. And if Torah tells us that you should not go astray, you should not go after your heart and your eyes, etc., that means that I have the full ability and capacity to be 100% control over my eyes, my ears, and my thought. Because Torah would never ask me something I can't not to do. I cannot do. So Torah says I can, but on the other hand, it's so challenging. And if it's so challenging, and the present war, not my packages of the past, the present war is so challenging, and that itself apparently has the koach to bring the ability to bring some spirit down. It's like too much. You're on the battlefield, certainly you're conquering, you're coming, and you're gaining ground, but all of a sudden you come into a certain battle. It's just so overwhelming that you just could succumb to the pressure of the fight itself. Even you have the might, but the fight is so strong, and it's so complicated, and it's so tantalizing, and there's no end to it. I don't see an end to it. So that itself, even I have the might, that itself could bring my spirit down, that I should succumb. In other words, I should not necessarily triumph in the battle, in the war. So what do we do about it? So basically, the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us over here the problems, the reason why one cannot stand in. He feels that it, or rather, this would perhaps interfere with his simcha, with his joy and elation, and uplifted spirit in his avodas Hashem, is because there is, to some degree, there is a mistaken perspective, erroneous perspective on the onset about how he's supposed to deal with these realities. Meaning like this: once the person knows who he really is, and namely what he really is not, then it's much easier to deal with these realities and maintain a constant uplifted spirit. And how so? The problem why the person loses himself is because, first of all, he feels generally the great contradiction. He feels this dichotomy which exists within his own reality. He goes to shul, he thinks he loves God. He liked to think he loves God. He liked to think he's Ayev Hashem, Yari Hashem. He fears God, he loves God. He davens, he finds a passion in his davening. And we're not talking about people who just, extra shuckle. Their davening is just an external expression. I mean, inside, not necessarily there's a warmth or there's a true, genuine love and fear. But you're dealing with someone who's a real kosher, pnimistic yid. In other words, he's a yid which is a serious, earnest Jew, and his focus is truly on God and godliness, and namely his relationship with God. So he stands in davening. He could his heart could warm itself up. The heart can warm itself up, and with a good exercise and good davening. On the contrary, it's a good, opportune time when the person davens. It says that not only he closes himself to HaKadosh Baruch Hashem, opens windows of opportunity from above in order to enhance that relationship. Hence, the person's davening could truly be with a healthy passion. But yet, so he believes, probably this is God. I'm passionate with the Almighty. And then he goes outside. And all of a sudden he has the other presentations and he is inclined to them. He says, do I love God? Or I love things which are diametrically oppose God's reality. A sin, giving into Yetzer Hara, impurifying my eyes, my thoughts. Besides the fact the person is called a Rasha, the moment he violates not only in speech but even in his eyes and his thoughts. And it impures his soul. And yet, knowing all that, I have a lust and a temptation. And I have to control myself. And the question is, who's the real me? Do I love God or I love the antithesis to God? And that dichotomy causes the person to fall into this into this negative spirit and mindset and so on. And namely, he starts the confusion. He could be very confused because he really believes that the real me is when I was in shul and I was exercising a hearty relationship with God. That's the real me. So when he comes out and he realizes that he has temptations to things which diametrically oppose the reality of God, which is again, God is holy, pure, and so on, and this is just the opposite, the impure, the unholy. That's where this conflict or this doubt spirit could come to the surface, which naturally is very damaging in our service to God. As opposed to when a person would put things in perspective. And then, or more than that, I would just add one more detail. When it comes to the challenge itself, when he's challenged and he has to pull his mind and his heart and his eyes away from something, he feels that even I won the war, even he feels he won the war, I'm really the bad guy. He might think. He or she might think, for that matter. Because when I was in shul, when I was davening, I was doing all the good stuff, I was in a world of kedusha, in a world of purity. So now, when I am challenged, first of all, like I said before, there's a problem, is like, where's the real me? But more than that, I feel the fact that I was challenged, that itself puts me in a very bad position in the face of God, in the face of myself. How is it that I had that challenge? And I had that challenge. In other words, how is it I had the challenge? I mean, to say it was an impure challenge in the onset. You know, even, or say better, even I won the challenge, but I was in an area, even for the you know, I'd like to deal with things which are holy on the onset they're holy. Yeah. My challenge with the negative, I feel that I'm already in an unholy domain. I had the challenge. The person is down and he's melancholy from the fact that, I was a good Jew and I had a passion in learning and davening, and all of a sudden I'm having a struggle with things which are so lowly. For example, take a person which is into diamonds. He's a diamond dealer. Okay, you will not catch him playing with ants. A child, for example, which doesn't have any focus or doesn't place value yet to life, immature, perhaps uneducated, you would sit in the grass and play with the ants, which is not a pleasant thing for any human being to do. And a child, because sometimes would do so, he gets himself dirty. It doesn't seem like a right thing. A child should play with a nice toy or something, maybe with a nice toy of Jewish content, a puzzle and so on. Playing with ants is like something which it's creepy, right? But a person matures and he's a clean person, which a clean person usually stays away from anything not dirty, the things which are dirty. And then he not only is clean, but he climbs the ladder of maturity and cleanliness and so on, and then he becomes a very he's a successful businessman. He's dealing with diamonds and things which are very have intrinsic value and so on. And then the next time he will come out to this garden, to his backyard, and suddenly he will have this temptation to play with the ants which is in the corner of his yard. But he's not going to do it, because I don't play with ants. I'm this diamond merchant. But he'll, for some reason, from his youth, whatever it is, he'll have some interest. Let's say, as an example, theoretically, he finds himself having the interest in playing with ants. He won't do so because, again, he's in a different ball game, in a different world at this time. But then he'll come back in and think, like, he will look at himself so foolishly, or he would condescend his own mitziyut. He would condescend his own posture as a human being, and question where all his achievements, that I was only in a different world. Why did I even have this temptation to take a stick and play with ants? I didn't do it because I know it's not my world. But I could lament on the fact, why did I have such a real temptation? There was a real temptation. I had to hold myself back. That could put a person into a state of real, true inner confusion. We're using an example. I don't know if it really, really happens exactly like that, but it could happen things which are similar. In this case also, the depression or the melancholy really exists of a person who's a frumiyid, and he has a passion of doing a mitzvah and learning and davening and doing all the things which are healthy, Jewish, and are divine, things which are sanctified, things which are godly. And I do have a passion doing it. And again, between me and my Creator, and me and my fellow friend, that extend a hand, be pitiful and compassionate to another. I feel myself doing all the right things. And then I go outside, I walk half a block, all of a sudden there is another challenge, which is which is antithetical to everything which I was involved with till now. So I know I pulled my eyes away from things which Torah said I should not look at. I know I pulled my ears away, which was something which I was not supposed to hear. I know I averted my mind, not to, God forbid, things which Torah says I'm not allowed to entertain my mind with. But why was it so challenging? Why was it so tempting? I felt that I was in the world of Kedusha, in the world of holiness. I'm probably this very bad guy because my inclination, I'm inclined to all that stuff. I'm inclined to all that bad stuff. I probably must be. So first of all, who is the real me? Which is so confusing. But more than that, and deeper than that, which could really cause this melancholy, bring me to downlift the spirit, means to say that I'm not really that passionate Jew. Because I was innately inclined to things which were so opposite. And again, we say they're diametrically opposite. A world of impurity which is diametrically opposite than God, which is all about holiness, purity, divinity, etc. So that itself could bring a person down. And even if I overcame it, I'm probably the bad guy. That I had the challenge, I had wars in this garbage in this area. And that truly could bring a person down. And if a person's down, again, as we said, the basis of this, just never to lose focus. I even repeat it quite a few times, but I repeat it again and again because this is the basis of the issue which Al-Tirab is dealing with. And if I'll be in be down spirited, there's no question the Yitzhahara will be able to have me in his net much quicker. I will not have the adequate ability to overcome the Yitzhahara. Because when we're out there on the battlefield, we must stand with simcha, with joy and elation and an uplifted spirit. As opposed to a person put things in perspective. And this is the message of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe is telling us, don't question yourself too much. Because there are two sides to you. There's a godly soul, which is passionate only in this which is godly, only in a good davening, only in a good study of Torah, only in doing a mitzvah, and is passionate to help another person, again, ben adam l'chaver, a man and his fellow friend. That's where it derives pleasure from, and that's the only place where the godly soul derives pleasure from. Anything else which is not aligned with godliness, the Shalikis abhors, despises, is disgusted with. Yet we have a nefesh bahamis, we have an animal soul. And we have a Yitzhahara. And the animal soul is inclined to anything which is animalistic. Anything which is bodily. Anything which it is innately inclined to anything which is associated with the bodily pleasures and desires and lusts and temptations. Hence, when you walk out there and you're nefesh bahamis and you feel you're inclined to something which is inappropriate, so don't get turned down from this. It doesn't mean you're the false Jew. No, you were a Jew who tried very hard when it came to learning not to waste a moment of your learning Torah. and to try to have the maximum intent in your prayer. And when you did a mitzvah, you did it the right way. But there's a nefesh bahamis because, again, we're dealing with the Beinoni over here. Because again, this is the message, the Sefer Shel Beinoni, the message to the average person, which has never not become the tzaddik yet. As we mentioned, that the mission of the Jew is to be a Beinoni. And remember in the previous chapters, the Beinoni is not someone who transformed his animal soul, that the enemy became completely an ally and he doesn't have any of these temptations. No, the Beinoni is somebody who never got rid of his Yetzer Hara. His Yetzer Hara is in full tact and in full swing and it has its full potency and capacity and interest to be more and more animalistic. But the Beinoni never sins once. How does that work together? Again, I'm not going to go over the important messages with Alter Rebbe elaborated and expounded so carefully in the original chapters, up till the culminating in Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Daled, which again, Yud Beis beginning the Beinoni, Vaha Beinoni, which everybody can go back to these chapters in the previous, the above-mentioned websites. Because the Beinoni and how does it go together? Not sinning once, because the Beinoni is somebody who has a temptation, perhaps to sin, but he will not listen to the Yetzer Hara. Not only in action, but in speech. A Beinoni has a temptation because he never got rid of the Yetzer Hara. The tzaddik got rid of the Yetzer Hara. And our mandate in this world not necessarily is to be the tzaddik. Our mandate in the world is to be the Beinoni, meaning to say that don't look for something which not necessarily is true. As the Alter Rebbe points out and brings certain proof that tzaddik is a certain time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides that he's going to upgrade you to the world of being a tzaddik, that your nefesh bahamis will be transformed, the Yetzer Hara will be transformed. And when you say Yetzer Hara being transformed, you say Yetzer Hara will not have this temptation to look at that billboard. That's a tzaddik. But we have the mandate to be Beinoni, means to say I have a nefesh alikisa, godly soul, I have a nefesh bahamis, and I have an animal soul, which the animal soul is driven to anything animalistic. And innately driven to anything animalistic. Or driven to anything innately animalistic. And I could still remain 100% pure of sin, meaning to say that Nefesh Bahamis could present me, do that, speak that, and he'll show me the passion, how excited it is to speak that Lashon Hara, but I will never allow myself to violate. In other words, once that temptation should cross from heart into action, from heart into speech, from heart into mind. Because the moment I allow that temptation to enter into action, speech, or mind, I'm no more a Beinoni, I'm a Rasha. Because a person sins once, may it be with action, may it be with speech, may it be with thought even. I accept deliberately a thought which is inappropriate, I'm a Rasha. The Beinoni is not a Rasha, not even one moment. Not one moment of his life is in a rush. He does every single thing that Hashem tells him to do. And he stays with him everything Hashem says he's not supposed to do. But yet he's not a tzaddik. He still has a nefesh bahamis, an animal soul which is in full tact. Which is giving him a message which is so opposite, diametrically opposite of what the nefesh alikisa is giving him. And it could be that all his life, the Alter Rebbe said, David decides not to upgrade him. It could be all his life he will be the Beinoni. And not necessarily the tzaddik, but a Rashi he'll never be, because he'll never allow the temptation to enter. Hence, when we look at it from that perspective, and we think about the fact that yes, I was passionate in this which was divine, noble, godly, holy, etc., and then I have other temptations and other wars and other quarrels and other challenges, it should not bring my spirit down. It's just because I have an nefesh bahamis, I have a Yetzer Hara, I have an animal soul. What I will make sure is that I do not allow the animal soul to triumph over me, which means that when the animal soul says, look at that billboard, as an example, using billboards, we're giving a shir in Tanya. The other day someone says, you mean the billboard? Yeah, well obviously, we're obviously trying the things which we're not allowed to entertain our mind with. I will not give in. But shall we know, and this is one of the punchlines that Alter Rebbe is saying over here, that shall we know that when we have the ability, or rather when we're tested to speak something, or let's focus on this pasuk, to look at something which is inappropriate, where the Beinoni has the Beinoni has the temptation or arouses within us a temptation to look at something, and I say no to that Yetzer Hara, to the Beinoni, it shouldn't be a reason for me to be sad. Quite on the contrary, it should be a reason for me to be sameach, to be joyful, because at that moment, as the Gemara says, when a person Yoshev, the Gemara says Yoshev Lev Aved, a person had a temptation to do a sin, and he sat and he did not do the sin. They give him reward as if he does a mitzvah. So instead of being sad about that challenge, quite on the contrary, I have to know that the challenges will exist. I will be because I'm a Beini, I'm not a tzaddik. Again, one could look at the whole arichas, the whole elaboration of this topic in the earlier chapters, but in this case, in this context, it will never interfere my joy and elation and uplifted spirit, because I know that I have an animal soul, I know I have a Yetzer Hara, and because I have a Yetzer Hara, these things will exist, but not that will exist that I will accept them deliberately, because once I accept an inappropriate thought deliberately, I'm no more a Beinoni, I'm a Rasha. But I will make sure to be a Beinoni all the time. And if I'll make sure to be a Beinoni all the time, I will not allow that temptation to ultimately be realized, be actualized in my system, meaning to say I will turn my eyes away from it, I will turn my ears away from something that I'm not allowed to listen to, I will turn my thoughts, despite an entertaining thought will come around, I will turn my thoughts away. And when I do so, it's not a reason for me to be sad. Quite on the contrary, I should be sameach, because in that moment, which I did not give in to my Yetzer Hara, I have fulfilled the mitzvah of which Teda testifies that yes, you will have the temptation, but if I will not give in to that temptation, it's a reason for me to be happy and not sad. So once we understand that it's about an Aveda, it's a service which should bring me, it could contribute to my simcha, so then when I exercise, when we look at things in the right perspective, then at that time, at that moment, or that exercising this understanding, what the Eibishter wants from us in this pasuk, not to bring us down, but quite on the contrary, he gives us certain challenges that we are able to overcome. And the more difficult the challenge, the more reward the Yid gets. And the more he is aligned with Ratzin Hashem. And Hashem is extremely excited about his overcoming these temptations. So there is a simcha, there's a mutual joy between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, even he's challenged with all these above mentioned challenges, he's able to maintain his simcha v'tuv levav in order to continue his joy and elation of heart, in order to continue in his march in his Avodas Hashem. I will just say that we didn't do the text tonight, but we'll, God willing, continue the text as Hashem in the upcoming class. But this is the gist of the Alter Rebbe's Pedic. Have a wonderful evening.